All right, guys, quick update. I'm pretty happy with this new variation. I do encourage you to watch the original series that I did. That's phase 1 through 10, like clockwork, and then I did most of the bonus phases as well, just to get those periodic updates. This one I omitted a lot of the phases, but a quick update on the process. Overall, I'm really happy with it. I do encourage you to watch the original videos though, just to understand the setup. Um, so just finished phase 13, which is 12th collection. I planted expansion number 10, which is where I'm going to stop uh, this season, but in upcoming seasons as well. I'm not going to go past expansion number 10. My old system was based off the old system of QI, and I was adding 12, 11, 13 expansions just to generate more resources so that I could donate resources on the map if I wasn't able to fight. The new variation of QI eliminates the donation possibility on those higher levels, so I've adjusted my design strategy accordingly. We're going to stop at 10 expansions always. I do think 10 is ideal. I have a few colleagues that are stopping at 8 or 9, and they're already starting to repurpose some of their cheap housing into arches and victory towers. I think 10 is a better idea. We'll jump into the map in a second and see how our troops are holding up. Structurally, both variations are almost identical, and the process is almost identical. Arch at opening, second arch as soon as possible, and then in terms of process anyways, and then structurally almost identical. The only difference is my old system had a lot of tailors that eventually we upgraded 3 or 4 of them into farms, but still predominantly tailors towards the end game. New variation is just butchers straight into goat farms and skip the tailor process entirely. So I haven't planted a tailor this season, and I probably will not. Well, I definitely will not. There's no reason to. So I omitted that step completely. A little more streamlined this time around. Cottages, my previous variation ended up planning a lot of villas towards the end game. I went straight to cottages as soon as possible, and I planted a few villa just with extra expansions as I created the space. But I didn't really even delete tile houses for the purpose of planting villa. I had to delete tile houses a couple times to manipulate happiness, but I'm not replacing housing really. I'm just expanding the space and adding more housing. Villa, I might plant 1 or 2 more. I I'll think about that. I don't really know that I need to. I've spent more shards on city development than I normally would. I also haven't bought actions yet though this season, and I'm not going to. So we'll jump into the map in a second and see what we see. So I haven't bought actions yet. I've spent more shards on the city than I normally would, and I rushed 1, 2, 3, 4 farms. I let the last 2 cook, and I've let all 3 of my villas cook organically. So at this point in the season, unless I actually rush the villa, there's really no point in planning it. It's double the collection of a cottage, but it's going to take me 2 cycles to actually get that collection. So at this stage in the season, I don't know that that's worth the investment. I will think about it though. Either way, I probably won't end up with more than 5 villas if I do plant anymore. This last collection that I just finished was primarily to get expansion number 10. I had enough resources left over to plant 1 victory tower, and then just butcher and tile house filler for the upcoming collection. I had enough resources actually to plant a cottage or a tailor but I don't want to wait the hour for those to cook and then have the upcoming collection be off by an hour. So we'll just do the cheap production buildings. I don't really need the tower, but it's a step ahead for what we're going to do in the next cycle. Next cycle will be to delete this butcher and spend the entire collection on ballistas or troops, whatever troop it is that you're using. I'm using ballista and archer. I have this permanently disconnected archer that I've had since opening day. If you guys look back on my original series, you'll see that was a big part of my strategy. I've carried that over to this system, and I think that is an awesome idea. So I'm running both of those. Next cycle is ballista. I didn't plant the camp ahead of time because I don't have enough resources to run a ballista cycle until my next collection, so I might as well just get the resources at this point, you know. Anyways, next collection is just use the entire, every penny that I get from the collection is just to go to troops, and then delete the troop building permanently. And if my strategy is accurate, which I think it is, I won't need to replant it. I'll still keep the archer for the troop donation nodes, but the ballista that I produce on the upcoming collection, which would be Thursday morning, I don't think I'll need to produce troops after that. This step happened Friday morning in my original series, so I do think this new variation is a little more streamlined. The collection after that, which would be Thursday night, is going to delete these tile houses and start replacing with pairs of arch and aqueduct. I have the happiness to justify that. We only have 125 surplus happiness, but we also have 400 happiness wrapped up in these deletable houses. So we'll be able to plant two aqueducts just from the happiness that we already have, and then arch plus aqueduct number 3 as well. Resources at this point are around 450 of each, roughly, give or take, and it kind of depends on some of these temporary buildings, which as we get into these later stages aren't going to exist anymore. But for now, that's kind of the variable. My initial goal this season was to plant an aqueduct every collection starting Tuesday night. It's now Wednesday night, and I'm not going to start planting aqueducts until Thursday night. So Thursday morning collection is dedicated to printing ballista. Thursday night we'll start printing aqueducts. Original strategy was to start running aqueducts Wednesday night. We're not going to accomplish that until Thursday night. So I'm a day behind my original goal, but this is a variation that I just came up with this season, so I'm still working out some kinks. I think the only mistake that I made this entire season was planning the aqueduct early. I planted one aqueduct, I think it was like Saturday night, maybe Sunday morning, just trying to get some momentum towards that task. I have the space for it, and I've always had the space for it. That's not the issue. I did have to manipulate my happiness on several different collections, though. And we'll jump into the map here in a second and see what the fighting is like. But I think the aqueduct that early was premature. If you're surviving on the map, there's really no reason to allocate your happiness to attack buildings. It's better to use your happiness towards housing, even if it's just tile houses. They're deletable. Delete, rebuild every single collection, that doesn't matter. It's better to allocate your happiness towards actual supply production, coin or supply production, versus attack boost that you potentially don't need. So I think that was my only mistake this season, was planning the aqueduct prematurely. But so tomorrow's process is just troops in the morning, and then at night we're just gonna crank out a ton of arches and aqueducts. So the nice thing with the arch and aqueduct strategy versus, I know a lot of you guys like the towers. I know that. You've told me that. I understand that. I'm not disagreeing with your logic. That's how I used to do it as well. The nice thing with the arch and aqueduct is that you actually achieve perfect parity on happiness. So you can actually plant one arch. Man, sorry. Spelling is hard. Words are hard. One arch equals 3 aqueducts. Perfectly. And it's a perfect balance on happiness. 3 aqueducts gives us 60% attack. And yes, this is divided into 30% red, 30% blue. I understand that. I know some of you guys want to emphasize one color or the other. I get that, and that is a variable. But if you're in a small guild where you're potentially hitting both tiles because your other teammates aren't able to fight at all, or you don't even have enough teammates to divvy up colors, so you all have to hit everything, the aqueduct is giving 60% total. In order to get 60% total out of towers, we would need 12 towers, which is not only more space than the aqueducts would consume 9 squares in this scenario. The 12 towers would consume 12 squares, obviously, but the happiness is the real issue. That would consume 900 happiness. We're gonna call it unhappiness now. So here's the trade-off. Arch plus aqua, and my spelling is not on point tonight. Equals happiness balance. Saves 3 squares, essentially. Arch plus tower to get the same attack boost percentage. And I understand that some of you guys want to prioritize red or blue. I do get that, and I understand that. I don't think you're wrong by doing that. But I would actually encourage you, I'll come back to this, but I would actually encourage you to subsidize the single category that you really need. I would encourage you to subsidize that at the very end of the season. And I'll come back to that and kind of explain my strategy there. But hold off on that through the building process. Better to plant the aqueducts because right now, we'll jump into the map so you can see what I'm seeing. But right now, you don't need to hyper focus on one category or the other. You can potentially still hit both as long as you have balanced attack stats, right? Anyways, in summary, arch plus tower is a deficit of 225 happiness and a deficit of 3 squares. So if you're planning those early on, like this whole build process is based off a 10-hour timer, right? The nice thing with towers is that they build in an hour. That's cool. But if you're designing your whole city growth based on 10-hour timers, then just plant the aqueduct before you go to bed, right? And then the difficulty is going to reset at midnight. So as long as you can survive on the current difficulty, plant your aqueducts at night, and then when you wake up in the morning to a new difficulty, the aqueducts that you planted the night before have already cooked, and you're ready to go for that day. Does that make sense? The very, very end game, if you do have a need to hyper focus on one tile or the other, that's where you would start deleting some of your medium housing and plant some towers, knowing that they'll cook in an hour. You're probably done with collections at that point. And even if you do collect your very last collection at 120%, it's not going to matter because you don't need the resources to do anything, you know. So at the very end, if you need to hyper focus on one or the other, that's where you would delete some housing and plant some towers. They cook in an hour, so you'll be ready to fight quickly. But through the middle game, I think the aqueduct is a way better formula. Yes, it takes time to cook. It's also a smaller footprint and it balances you on both stats. So let's jump into the map real quick. Let's see what we're seeing. I guess before I hit that, let's look at my attack stats. My city favors blue, so I have 450 over 260 basically on blue, and then 350 over 200 essentially on red. So my city does favor blue. This would be a scenario where I'm building aqueducts that gives me boost on both, right? And towards the end game, if I'm really struggling, then I will delete some housing and subsidize the red need with a couple more red towers. But for right now, while we're still working off of, there's red tiles, there's blue tiles, while we're still working off of both of those, it's good to have a balance. So let's check out the struggle. The struggle is real. I am barely surviving. That's pretty wicked damage. Obviously, I'm being sarcastic. What's the point in planning these towers that are just going to chew up your happiness, right? Those towers are going to chew up your happiness. What's the point in planning those prematurely if you're still able to survive on the map? And that's why I said the aqueduct that I have planted was probably premature, because it did cause me to manipulate happiness on several collections. I think the strategy is right. Plan them as soon as you need them. But in my case, I didn't need it 3 days ago, and I don't need it now. I have like bare minimum troops, but they're not dying, right? So there's no point in printing 5,000 of them on my second collection. It's better to spend those resources planning farms, expansions, arches, whatnot. Sorry for rambling. The bottom line is every player is different. Every player has different city stats. Mine are pretty decent, but some people have higher stats than mine, right? So they could postpone building their aqueducts potentially till the end of level 8. Potentially based on their stats. Every city is going to be different, but based on your city stats and your progress in QI, make a mental note that when you start struggling on the map, you need to build aqueducts the level before that. So if you start struggling in the map on level 7, then you should be planning aqueducts with your last collection on level 6, so that those aqueducts cook overnight and they're ready in the morning when you start fighting on the map and doing your first collection for level 7. Does that make sense? That's the bottom line. Plant aqueducts as soon as your troops are going to need some attack boost. Start planting aqueducts the night before. What day that happens on is going to depend on your city stats, but do it in that order and go with the aqueduct. I strongly encourage you to do that. It'll cook overnight. So if I'm able to survive on level 7, I'm out of actions. I'm not out of troops. I'm out of actions, right? And you can see that I haven't bought actions this season. I'm not hurting on troops. I've only got 23 ballista. I'm just out of actions. So the difficulty level here is not really the issue, or my troop quantity for that matter. I could have 500 troops and still 500 troops and 5,000 towers in my city, and it still wouldn't make a difference because I'm out of actions. So as soon as you start burning up troops faster than actions based on the difficulty, that's when you need to start planning attack and start with the aqueducts. More efficient on happiness, more efficient on space. So unless you're willing to just purchase all 15 expansions with shards, it's probably better to use your space wisely. I do have a couple one by one. These I'm actually going to delete in the end game and drop another arch in here. I've already kind of mapped that out. But I theoretically have a couple one by one locations where I could fit some towers. Do that at the end though, and tailor that to your weakest attack stat. So I'm weaker on red. These would be red towers, right? But everything that I'm going to plant in the meantime is going to be aqueducts so that I have a balance on both and can hit any tile on the map. Even though my city naturally favors blue stats, blue is not going to be comfortable for me on level 11. You know what I mean? Like, yes, my city naturally prefers blue. I get that. But neither one of them is going to be fun for me on level 11. So if I only build victory towers for the purpose of boosting my red stats, I'm gonna struggle on the thing that my city is actually designed to be good at, you know? And the opposite logic is also true. If my city is naturally good at blue and I hyper focus on blue, like I'm gonna smash every blue tile that shows up, right? But we get stuck on a red tile in the map, and everyone else in the team also has blue stats, so we can't even reach the red stat that I've built my whole city in order to be able to smash, right? But we're hung up on a red tile. Everyone is built for blue, so we can't even reach the blue tile that we're all capable of smashing. Build the aqueducts during your developing stages. That's the theory that I wanted to test this round. So far, it's working pretty well. I've only planted the one, but I will have enough resources to spend my next six collections just on that purpose. The math behind all that, I mean, QI is not a mythical voodoo thing. QI is just math, right? So the math behind that is that if I'm winning on level 7 and level 8 increases the difficulty of the opponent by 10%, the aqueduct that I plant the night before matches the 10% increase for the next difficulty. The math is incredibly simple on that. So towards the tail end, yeah, plant some extra towers so you can supplement one attack or the other wherever you're hurting. But in the developing stages, just pair your aqueduct planting to the progress on the map. The math is actually like stupidly simple. I guess it couldn't be more simple than that. Anyways, that's it for this round. I meant this to be a quick update, but got a little bit longer than I expected. I hope it's helpful for you guys, though. I hope this gives you some direction. I've seen a lot of different systems out there. Pick whatever works for you. I like this pattern with the 6 houses on the left, a group of 3 on the right normally. If depending on where your expansions land, which is where they landed this season, I shifted the row of 3 that would normally be in this column. I shifted that to the right and then planted some 4x4s over here. If you end up planting expansions to the left, adapt it to that. But the basic structure here is always going to be the same in my original series as well as this new series. I have housing, house, or production, whatever you can fit in that side, and then pair of house, production. It's the same pattern that I've used in the previous variation as well as this new variation. Super streamlined, and you don't have to rearrange your town hall after opening day. You move it once and it has been there since opening day. So it's that makes it easy to build around. Road consumption, road use, I'll have to pull it up on PC to actually check, but we can get a guesstimate real quick. Yeah, it looks like roughly 30 roads. I have 15 cottage plus 3 villa equals 18 houses, 6 farms, 7 arch, empty square. Some of them are purposeful, like this group of 3 tall with there's a road redundancy here where this house is connected by road and road, but the purpose of this group is to be a butcher or a ballista camp or a goods building or whatever. So there is some road redundancy there that will eventually become just combination of arch plus aqueduct all the way across the bottom there. So give me a little bit of credit for there, but we're going to include that in our empty space calculation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 empty squares. So if you're looking at your city and you've got 2 farms, 50 roads, and 67 empty squares, there's probably some improvements that you can make. That's the reason why I like my system. That's why it works for me. If you don't like it, you're entitled to your opinion. But that's why I like it for me, is that it really minimizes that road consumption. Disconnected Archer comes in handy, especially with the troop donation nodes in this new variation. So pretty minimal waste on the road consumption or empty space. Pretty minimal waste on both of those categories. Anyways, that wraps it up. Tomorrow's just troops. I'm not going to record that. Tomorrow night is just arch and aqueduct. I'm not going to record that. I'll probably check in with you guys, difficulty 10, just see where we're at, and if we need to fine-tune anything going into difficulty 11, and then I'll post a finished video of difficulty 11 or difficulty 12, and just see how this system pans out on the map. So, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you later, guys. Bye.